I was wrong. I'm a bit rusty. I hate that 3 point. What is that 3.2? Why would a res pick that? Why would a res ever pick 3.2? That's such a bad pick for 3.2. I agree that Z is PR. Z did not like ARM. Remy said nothing. Anders said nothing, which Anders, I don't think I introduced Anders. Anders is the do operator. Anders shaded Pat for 3.2. And Pat didn't really care. So I think this shot is only ever in Pat and Z. And let's look over these. Why? Anders shaded Pat for zero reason. Whatever. Remy is res. Why does Anders res or Remy? Anders can res Remy actually, because this is let's say it's Anders to Z and not me. Then he would see 2.5, which is this guy's, which is a team without Remy. And then he would see Z's team without Remy, and he would be able to res it. I think Anders to Z is actually really nice. He rejected 3.1. Maybe he thinks not me is a spy. You can kind of spy not me given his information. But, well, they want to shoot Anders Merlin. I don't know if I agree with that shot. I think I like Z shot more. When Z did not care at all. And Z just apps that team. When, and they just didn't care. they did not care about not me. Both of them did not care about not me. Something weird happened. Although not me was really just not chatting. And I do think that Merlin is on here. I think Merlin's on M4. Because otherwise... Well, I don't think Pat's PR anyway. This 3.2 pick. This is tragic. That's absolutely tragic. 4.1. And people just go with it. I don't think Remy is Merlin anyway. If Remy's Merlin, then it's like, what on earth happened? Z also picked a wrong M1 after Anders picked correct. Does Z pick wrong M1s? I don't think Anders would pick a correct M1 when it's double spy hammer. I think he would pick an incorrect M1. I really think it's Anders to Z, and Z picks the wrong M1. I haven't played with Z a whole lot, so that's a big question on how I play. I also think that Remy just didn't really do anything in M4. It's just like, okay, I guess I'm res now. You know, not me kind of spied her, but yeah, I think a better M1 for ARM to pick would be Z as well. It's just a weird M1. I don't know. Because when it fails, then you get a lot of information. And he would be able to res Pat after. You can res Remy after M2 fails. Or you can res Anders after M2 fails. But I don't know. It's weird. I would rather pick Z because let's look back at these M1s, and let's say you are arm on M1, and let's say M1s are correct, and you pick Z and M1 plus 1 fails. Then you know that not me reses Remy, and that Z should be resing Pat. And there's just a lot, there's just a lot more solid information. Because when this fails, instead he can say what? Okay, so not me reses Anders. And if not me is res, then Z is a spy and Remy is res, and the team would be So this would be a really good or M3 to pick. Because if they don't app that team of Anders, Remy, not me, and arm, well, it kind of outs PR. That would be like the most solid one. But when arm says M1 or M1s aren't correct, he outs PR. Because they're still an M1 team, which I knew was suspicious. I can't believe that Pat blamed though. If you go back and read that chat with Pat, when Pat started blaming in 3.1, when he's like, "How can you say that after yada yada yada?" Whatever. Remy is res. Anders is not Merlin with this chat. Pat is not Merlin with this chat. Pat got kind of PO'd. And Pat repicked with a double spy hammer. I think it's just Z. Remy didn't do a whole lot. Z did a lot. Pat to Z. I like Anders to Z a lot. Anders picks a correct M1 because he doesn't know who the spy is. What a random... I don't know why he doesn't just flip pick. That's a problem when you pick random M1s. Is that you run into a situation where the other M1s are incorrect and you're picking a correct M1, or you're just picking a random incorrect M1. And if you want to do that as a VT and that's your play style, that's your decision, but then you have to do it as other roles too. Which, to be fair, I did think that Remy was not VT because Remy didn't on-pick hammer, which is just a Remy specialty. But I was probably wrong there. I think the combo is Anders to Z. But man, if I was a res this game, I would be so angry at my PRs for apping 3.2. I don't think this is forgivable if you're Merlin apping this. And Z's just like, yep, I'm gonna app Ben 4 with 0 chat. I don't know. If I was Z and Percy and I decided to go with Anders, which not me can get moored for 2.5 as well, since if that fails, and yeah, well, let's consider Z to Anders, not me. That's also viable. Because not me can get moored for 2.5. But then that 3.2 app. He rejected it first, and then he apped it again. Maybe he thinks he's gonna die if he does that. I'm sure it's in those two. I'm sure. Well, not 100% sure, but I'm 99% sure it's in one of those two. And the question is, which one is which? I don't know how bold Z is as Merlin either. That's a big missing piece that I just don't know that information. But man, what on earth is that 3.2 repick? That's such a bad repick. Read Arm's chat. Read Anders' chat. Arm literally says this. He says in 3.1, he says, there's no team clean. Oh, I guess there's one. That's M2. Look for it. I read it the first time. I'm gonna drop info. You should have a pick. And Pat kind of shades him for that, but I think Pat's just annoyed. Seems far-fetched, and Andrews even says, I don't really like that a whole lot. And then Anders says, well, Arm picked it, so I probably would have apped it if Arm picked it. This doesn't sound Merlin-y to me. It really doesn't, and Pat's chat doesn't sound Merlin-y either. When Arm, or Anders accuses Pat, not super accuses, but soft accuses, and Pat goes, why are you saying this to me? And Anders goes, okay, whatever, Remy is Rez. And then Pat agrees. Why does Pat agree with that? Oh, because Anders is off M2. And Remy's off M2, so he can do that. Let's see who they're considering shooting. Remy also called them clowns for apping it, but Remy just had no chat and had no participation, which Remy does that from time to time. I will be interested to see who does this, but I don't think it's Remy. I don't think it's Pat. I would rather shoot Z or Anders simply for the 3.2 3.2 app. Anders rejected it at first. I think that I hate that repick. There's no way it's Pat with that repick. And Arm says Arm, it's a 50-50 in Anders. Pat is not Merlin for you being morgued. Not Me is simply morgued because she doesn't provide a team in critical. And she doesn't participate with the res. So it's such a tough call. It's a tough game. Anders also asked that. And asked, who are we apping? I don't know who to add. And if Anders was Merlin, it's Anders to Z. Here we go, boys. Arm found the combo. Yep. I think it's Anders to Z or Z to Anders. Both of them work. And it's a 50-50. And Pat and Remy are VTs. Why does he reject 3.1? I would shoot Z. I guess we'll find out. I would have rather added Arm than Pat, simply for the fact that Arm calls. Well, it depends. Actually, if I was Percy, I probably would spy Arm because there's no way he's VT. But if I was VT, I would app Arm because I would think he was PR, and I would think that he's trying to share things. And even though he's kind of a dead PR, I would rather go with his team because I think that 3.2 app is just criminal. And I suppose I should hold Z more accountable, but I think Z hasn't played as much as Arm. Wait 1 second. They're saying something. 1.2 bothers me. Yeah, I don't get Z. Z to Anders or Anders to Z. And Pat also suggested the team. But I mean, Pat Percy to Z can No, Remy is Conference. Yeah, any Percy to Z can see that. Everybody rezzed Remy after 4.1. They're like, Remy's res, Remy's res. Like, all these people are trying to kill Z. Which, that Percy would be funny as well. That would be a toxic Percy play. Maybe he spies Remy for the same reason I spied Remy, because Remy was talking about pooping. That's actually possible. Like that's totally possible that Remy gets spied. And that would be funny. I think it's still more likely that it's X to Z. Anyone in Pat or Anders. I think it's more likely to be Anders to Z. Z is just so certain of M4. And Z just apps the clean team. It's like, yep, I know the clean team. I'm a pog reader. Maybe Z's just having a good day. I had a bad day recording this. Let's see if oh. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's just Z. Z is just on their A game the entire time. Or in some crazy world, it is Z to Pat. That would be the craziest world. I think Z's just Merlin. I would just shoot Z. I would shoot Z. I think it's Anders to Z or Pat to Z. So let's like review performances here, these games, and let's review how each player did. I'm typing out a Discord message too. Okay, done with Discord. I think Not Me probably could have chatted a lot more in Critical. I think that would help her solve the game a lot more if she just pushes anything. Try and push bottom. Or not bottom. That team failed. I would push anti-Z and, well, not anti-Z Anders. I would push anti-Z and Pat. And I would say, hey, this is the team I like. And I think you can get away with that. I think you can say, well, things happened. Okay, they're saying Pat to Z. I agree. If it's Z to Anders, it doesn't make sense. I think Z is the shot. I agree with Arm. It's either Anders to Z or Pat to Z. Those apps on 3.2 are just criminal. If Pat or Anders are Merlin. All the stuff that they're saying here, right here, is all true. And when Pat gets really mad, yeah. I can't believe that Z isn't like, hey, Hammer. Z's just like, I hope you app. And that's another reason why I think it's Z, is because none of Pat, Anders, or Remy suggested that Remy was the Hammer. And I think if they were Merlin, they would have pushed that harder. Um, but I would shoot Z. Is there anything else? I think it's Pat to Z or Anders to Z. Probably more likely to be Anders to Z. But both of them just slaughter Z. Let's see what happens. He shoots the target and holding my breath. Z was shot. Z was Merlin! Yes! We won! Just kidding, we lost. It was Pat to Z. Oh, Remy's flaming. That's not nice. Let's review. 3.2 is obvious repick because of 1.2. I don't blame this 3.2 repick that much. I had Remy spy in 1.3. Arm outed spy though. If I was Percy, I would not pick Arm again. When he outs not VT by saying that. And I don't think any VT would say M1s are wrong. Oh, just kidding, there's this one mission where they're right. I don't find Arm doing that as VT anyway. These people are getting mad. Who cares about what they say? I think not me could have pushed for a different team. I think Anders played as best he could. Anders rezzed Remy correctly. Remy probably could have chatted a lot more after being rezzed and like participated. Pat also rezzed Remy. Pat followed Anders. They both just... I think that 3.2 app is criminal. I think that repick app is criminal. If you were Percival in 3.2, and recalling back to what I said earlier, was that Arm is PR or spy when he starts chatting like that, which is true. I got it wrong. You know, I would have added Arm, but at least given all this stuff, I would have apped at Arm instead because I think that 3.2 is just such a spy pick app, repick an app, especially after Arm said that stuff about whatever. Yeah, Arm, this chat line, no VT is gonna say that. A VT would be more careful and more logical, especially Arm. Arm is a good player. There's no reason why Arm would say that as anything related to VT. So if I was in Pat's shoes and I have Arm saying M1s are wrong, then I would probably consider top. You know Morgana's team, which is Zigzag, and Z off picks that and it's rejected. And let's say what is Morgana's team is Zigzag, then what happens? Anders picked correctly. There's only one team that Pat can pick that's correct M1s, and that's a Zigzag on 3.2. Especially after 3.1 gets rejected. And Anders, that's such a good reject, and I rezzed Anders for that reject. It's such a good reject. And it's so strong. And it's just like, it's such a rest thing to do. Man, I feel so bad. Anders played really well. Anders played really well this game. And Arm played really well as well. Not me struggled a bit. Not me could have pushed for a team. I think Z needed to chat a lot more. He was just like, yeah, this is the team. I'm only on this one mission, but I know the team. I don't think Z is that strong of a player. And Remy could have chatted more. And Pat, I think that 3.2 repick is just criminal. And I think Andrews you should just stick with it. You shouldn't say that stuff about this stuff, because if someone wants to repick it and it's the team, you just got to go with it. I think that chat is really bad from Anders too. It's not Merlin chat. Oh wow. Well, at least I won if I was a spy. I would have lost if I was Raz. I would have 100% lost this game if I was Raz. There's no way I'm resing Remy until crit because of this mission. It's just a random off pick, which is what Remy does from time to time. But normally Remy doesn't do this as VT. Normally Remy does this as spy. But I will remember this for later. And I learned something this game. I hope you also learned something from this game. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time.